First, I want to talk a little bit about who we are in the Somatica Institute and how we developed this method. I think Danielle and I, when we first met, we had just come out of she came out of her PhD program, I came out of my master's program. And I think we both really wanted to help people around sexuality, but we wanted to help people have very deep and lasting change, not just like, oh, here's, 5 things you can do to spice up your sex life, but how do you actually transform your life so that you're living a better life and do these transformations on a really deep level, dealing with both our erotic selves, but our entire psyche as human beings. How do we start to feel better about ourselves and understand ourselves in the world and what we really want as opposed to what the world tells us. And as we started doing this work and working with people around their sexuality, then we realized, well, relationships are completely intertwined, can't separate those. So we started working with people around sex and relationships. So then we decided we really wanted to train people to be coaches in the method. And the method is really what we saw missing in the world of sex and relationship coaching was embodied learning that also took account of kind of our emotional well-being. So we need to go slowly with a lot of this learning and really have it be very supported. And we developed a method so that people could be practicing with erotic connection and emotional connection in a safe container. And eventually we realized that training to be a coach also really helped all of our students in their day-to-day lives, having better relationships, having better boundaries, asking for what they want, having amazing sex. And so we opened up the training for personal growth as well. So now we have these big, amazing trainings every year for personal growth and professional development. This year, we're also offering it online because the world has changed and we want to be able to make sure that everybody has access to this work.
I'm Danielle, if it wasn't clear, and I want to talk a little bit about new things that we are offering here, which is we just got accredited by the American College of Sexologists to offer, they have their umbrella, so if you do training with us, you can also become a member and a sexologist via the American College of Sexologists, and we also offer CEUs for therapists, and this is, like aligned with the BBS Board of Behavioral Science in California, and so far I know it's only in California. People try to tell me that, hey, let's move it to other, but yeah, we can, at this point, we're offering it in California. If you're here with us, that means you're interested in either personal growth or professional development, and you are here because you wanna know how people change and how to make change happen. And today we're gonna talk a lot about that. What we know, if we think about what do we know about change? What we hear everywhere is that we need to use our willpower to change. And if we had a better willpower, and we will be better in beating ourselves up, adhering to some sort of like structure and rules, and like do things this way, we might change. And for some people, it actually works. Some people need structure. Some people need system like that to change. Some people need rules. Some people need to, or at least used to, or to move themselves into changing goals. And by by telling themselves, you need to do harder, you need to work harder, you need to do those things, you can use your willpower. What we found is that change is usually not a lasting change. It's temporary change. You can do stuff, you can will yourself into working harder, but that's not something that really creates lasting change.
Yeah, usually when I think about it, I think about like kind of the difference between our inside voices and our outside. So if we have some sort of top-down program, you need to be this way, it's almost like some voices yelling at us from the outside, blah, 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 do this, do that. And I think there's something inside of us when we feel yelled out from the outside, just inherently wants to rebel, and that's the voice of our own inner will. And so in order for change to really happen, we need to get in touch with that will first to understand, who we are in the world and what we really want. What are our strengths? What are our challenges? What ways have we been wounded, and how is that wounding kind of control our lives in some way. And so it's a much more deep internal approach that we think helps people change in a long-term way. And we feel that there are sort of essential aspects to any kind of change program that will help you be the most effective. So whether you're wanting to change your own life because you feel there's parts of your life that are very painful for you, or whether you're a helper and you want to help other people out of some of their more painful challenges. I mean, my idea is, how much of our lives do we get to live in joy and fun and pleasure and putting our gifts out into the world? You know, I want way more of that and way less of the sort of painful, challenging contractions of, you know, like, I'm horrible, or what am I doing wrong? You know, those kinds of things. And I think when we really start to see ourselves and love ourselves, then some of the things that we think we have to do these top-down programs on actually start to change from the inside. You know, maybe we start taking better care of ourselves, or, you know, we start doing things. I mean, sometimes I'm afraid to say it, but, you know, we start doing things like meditating if they feel good to us. But I never want anything to feel like, oh, I'm bad for not doing that, or I'm ashamed because I'm not doing that. I feel like a lot of times people like admit, yeah, I know I should be meditating, but I'm not, or, you know, like, I ate something bad today, you know, like, and I think those shame spirals actually don't help us overall transform important aspects of our lives that we want to change. So, you know, today we're kind of doing, I think we had an amazing teacher, his name was Joseph Kramer, taught us sexological bodywork. And he used to talk about the class above the class, which was like, you know, what are we learning? Not like what are the tools that we're learning, but like, what is the bigger philosophy that we're learning? And we really want to bring that to you today, that philosophy of change.
And I want us to talk about the goal of, you know, like, because I think people look at change and they have in mind a specific goal. I want to have orgasms through penetration. I want to lose 50 pounds. I want to get more muscle. I want to never be triggered again. I want, you know, like, people have this idea of what the goal is, and they forget on the way that, you know, like, some people will never be able to achieve this goal. And that doesn't mean that their life suck. That means that maybe there are other goals that they're missing on the way that they can achieve. And a lot of what happens when we are becoming gentler on ourselves, and we're going to introduce the tools that we're going to introduce here, you get happier. So, and you get more self-accepting, and you become more loving to yourself. And, you know, for me, this is many times the ultimate goal, because at the end of the day, who cares about the rest? But that's me. I'm biased. And maybe I want to share a little bit my journey with change, because I think I've been on this, I constantly been moving. It also means that you don't do things perfectly. And I constantly been moving between, you know, like the top down ways of change, because that's how I was brought up. Like, oh, you, like, my goal, my holy grail in life was always to lose weight. And that was something that I got, like, you know, like, constantly commented on as growing up as a child. And I tried every possible diet, and I tried everything that's available out there in the market. I know everything about diets and nutrition, but those things don't never actually help me feel well, lose weight, number one, to feel better about myself. And as I'm like looking at the, you know, like, inside out way of looking at it, and gentleness, I feel like, hey, you know, like, maybe I can be sexy without losing weight, or I feel great even if I'm not losing weight. And I just like embracing myself as a beautiful person and a beautiful woman, without necessarily going for, it won't happen until, or it won't happen unless. And I think that's what we want to talk about here today. So what are the tools of change, or how people really make a difference in the way that they change in a lasting way, in a way that brings more gentleness, more love, more joy, and less pain into our lives, which I think is the ultimate goal. And what we introduce in Somatica is really, we talk about creating the basic tool is lowering shame, because shame is such a freeze response in the body, and it creates us just like do things from a place of fear and lack of love, as opposed to doing it from a place of gentleness and acceptance.
And I think the basic, when you first start to connect with people and connect with yourself, one thing that really helps foundationally is a sense of secure attachment. I think early on in psychology, people talked about, Carl Rogers talked about unconditional positive regard. But I think there's even something deeper that we can offer other humans in our lives, whether we are in relationship with them, emotional connection with them, or whether we are their practitioners, is a sense of secure attachment, of this feeling that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to take care of myself in this relationship so that I can stay connected with you no matter what during your growth process. And that feeling, like that foundational feeling of I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, is very, very helpful to calm a person's nervous system and to make them feel safe enough to share parts of themselves that they may not have shared with anyone else. Because in order to get to shame, in order to actually help people de-shamify, they have to feel like you're somebody who's there. And as soon as they tell you their worst shame or their deepest, darkest secret, you're not going to be like, ugh, what's wrong with you? Write you off. We actually have to love people and see them. And even when they're telling us their most challenging things about themselves or the worst things about themselves, we have to continue to see the whole picture and the beautiful being that is in front of us and love them through those challenging parts of themselves. And there's something that helps then give them a foundation of relaxation in their body and in their nervous system to start going through the next steps around change and transformation, right? Which is first and foremost, as Danielle said, to have less shame. The problem with shame is if you feel shamed about something, you hide it away in a dark corner and you never look at it. And nothing can change if it's hidden away in a dark corner and not looked at, And I think also when we think about the behaviors that we do that we're shameful of, often they have some underlying positive result that we need or that we're looking for, and maybe we're getting it in a way that isn't that yummy. But if we just say, oh, that's a horrible behavior, why do I do that, instead of going, yeah, why do I do that, like with sort of like a gentle loving question that sort of says, I'm okay, I'm lovable, I'm loved, and I do this thing and I wonder why. And that's a much gentler way to approach ourselves and moments of shame.
And also, as practitioners, we really bring the experience of like really loving our clients and looking at them from that place of unconditional love and like acceptance, because we know that there's perfection doesn't exist, and we know that gentleness is the only thing that can invite gentle, loving change. And I really want to emphasize the love, because love is the power of change, and love is the thing that can allow people to be gentler with ourselves.
I know it's one of the most amazing things about the training for me is just watching, like I look out and I'm lecturing and I just see everybody like, putting their head on each other's shoulder and like petting and just feeling that feeling of like everybody's there loving and supporting each other in that unconditional way just makes me feel, it makes me feel very proud to have created a space where that energy is available to people, because I do think it's the place where so much change happens. It's like transformation happens very quickly because there's that feeling, that holding of love between all of the people in the program. And it very closely related, I think, to that unconditional love and secure attachment is a sort of empathy towards other people and towards yourself. And one of the hardest things to be empathetic about is people who are very different from you. So one of the things that we have to cultivate in ourselves as humans who want to be in real intimacy with other people and as practitioners is to be able to put yourself in people's shoes who are very dissimilar to you, because you need to be able to see, like, not who does that, or how could you do that, or why are you doing that, but like, oh, what does that feel like for you, and what's it like to be in that moment as you? And empathy, we think of almost as something that's like inherent in people or not inherent in people. And some people had very empathetic experiences as children, and some people had to very much disconnect from the people who were taking care of them because it wouldn't have been healthy for them to stay connected. So people have different levels of capacity around empathy, but empathy can be learned, and you can kind of grow those muscles so that you can put yourselves in all sorts of different people's shoes. And that makes you a very effective practitioner, because then everybody feels understood by you. They're like, yeah, that is what I'm feeling. Oh, wow, how did you get that? Or how did you know that? Um, Even if it's something that I would definitely not feel under those circumstances, I can put myself in other people's shoes now by practicing. And I didn't used to understand, I didn't used to understand what's it like to be avoidant as opposed to my own ambivalent, frightened self, or what's it like to feel like you don't have any freedom in the world, because that was not my childhood. Tons of freedom, no boundaries, so it took me a while to understand what it was like to put myself in those other people's shoes. But having that empathy for others, and also for my own hurt little girl, and all the things that she did to try to survive the pain of abandonment trauma, cultivating that empathy towards myself also really helped me transform some of my most challenging patterns in relationship.
There's beautiful questions here. I want to take a moment to answer some of them because they're beautiful. How do you help someone love themselves if it's hard for them to accept it? And the way is really to just love them. And when we bring the love and the gentleness in our voice, in our eyes, in our, like the way we talk to them, we kind of teach our clients to be gentle to themselves by modeling it. So we are gentle with them. And today I had supervision with wonderful advanced practitioners, Somatica advanced practitioners this morning. And, it was beautiful because they prepped me for this talk. We already talked a lot about how change happens in supervision. And it was beautiful because there was like if you take the word should and you say to yourself, I should, just wanted to notice what happens in your body. What happens in my body is that it gets stuck right under the diaphragm and nothing moves lower. And if I say myself, even like a little purr, a little bit like, that would be so nice to do that. Everything wakes up in me and I feel like goosebumps in my skin a little bit and kind of like excitement for the day. So like just this gentle difference in the attitude of should as opposed to like, brings such a big difference.
So do you think that loving energy and community will still be there in the online program, even though we won't be with each other in person? Well, the wonderful thing is that with our in-person programs, we have started a little bit with some online work, and we're seeing that happen like immediately. People saying, wow, I didn't realize I could have so much like intimacy and connection over a Zoom call, and people feeling very relieved and enjoying those connections. So yes, so far, like we've had such loving, beautiful, supportive connections in those beginning online moments. And that group also did their small group work and got to meet each other. And they just thought, oh, I feel so much more accepted and relaxed, even just in this short 2-hour experience that we had online. So yes, I feel like it's really, it has worked better than even I think we thought it would. So it was great.
Yeah. And at the end, I was like seeing everyone. We asked everyone to do gallery view, and then we saw everyone and started crying. It's like everyone's here. And we did like virtual hand holding. It was wonderful. It was very touching. Both Celeste and I came out so inspired. And so like, like when we are teaching, we're part of your community. We're not just up here. It was such a mutually nourishing experience.
Well, we have a question about sexual abuse survivors and if we address it in the training. And yes, so many people are sexual abuse survivors and other kinds of trauma survivors. And our training is trauma informed. We really help people work slowly with whatever, trauma comes up. We talk about, sort of like how dissociation can happen and how people can learn how to take care of themselves differently in moments of dissociation, how they can teach their partners to do the same, and triggers and how to work with triggers. So, all of the tools around trauma that help you have more mastery in your life. If you have a history of trauma, whether it's sexual abuse or some other kind of trauma, we're practicing those in the training in a very interpersonal, mutually vulnerable way, which is very similar to how you'll need to do it out in the world when you're connecting with people that you love, or when you're supporting your clients in working through experiences of abuse. Additionally, a lot of times when people have a history of trauma, especially around sexuality, they can resolve a lot of the trauma, but they don't necessarily get back to this amazing celebratory place around sex. And that's another thing that Somatica kind of helps people go to the next level if they've had this history and want to reclaim their beautiful sexuality and accept and de-shamify whatever fantasies they have and all those kinds of things.
Beautiful question. I'm curious about when a client has something similar to a challenge you have, and you can put yourself in their shoes, but you haven't worked through it all the way. And I do want to say, how can you help? And the truth is that we don't ever arrive. No one arrives. We get better and better relationship with our hurts, and better relationship with the way that we were, criticized, rejected, abandoned, but we never arrive. And part of it just becomes a dimmer, like much more manageable, quieter voice, and we develop a kinder, gentler relationship with it. And I think this is the gift that we have to give to our clients, and it also really taps deeply into de-shamifying, because if we're sitting here as practitioners and telling them, oh, we've got it all, if you just do 5 minutes of this and 10 minutes of this and 7 very crafted meals of this, you'll arrive. But it's not true. People don't arrive to internal change by doing external actions. And we are modeling with our vulnerability how it feels like to be on the path, and how it feels like to struggle, and how it feels like when things are not always solid and they are fleeting, and that's part of life. And that brings so much relaxation, because as coaches we have the power to help people feel gentler about themselves by modeling being gentle to ourselves.
And I think it also speaks to like what the next piece of how you help people is, which is to have very effective tools. And I like to say I have amazing effective tools for sex and intimacy, and sometimes I use them. So, sometimes I don't use them because a trigger comes up and I behave in an old way that's yucky, or I don't ask for what I want in bed because I'm scared that someone's going to be uncomfortable with it or something like that. But that doesn't mean that I don't have the tools. And I think we can teach the tools even if we don't always practice them, right? And as we continue teaching them, it reminds us over and over again, oh yeah, I could do that myself. I could practice that myself. And so it's an ongoing process. And if there's something you're still working on, we mutually, we admit vulnerably to our clients, no, I know what you mean. That's something that I'm still working on. Sometimes when I get triggered at a high level, I turn into a crazy person, and here's what I'm working to do around it. And here's some ideas. And how does, have you ever tried this? And, so what feels like it's worked in the past, right? You can still talk and help them find the best tools for themselves, even if it's something that you're still dealing with.
We do have a few more points to talk about. Maybe we'll cover them and then we'll keep answering questions, even though the questions are wonderful and I definitely want to go to all of them. I want to pause for a second, talk about what we talked about so far. So you'll have like a more solid picture of point 1. We talked about the power of secure attachment and how it helps, an unconditional love, to help someone feel loved and start to feel like they can tap into the other stages and to the other tools that we have to offer, such as tool number 2, lowering shame. And we also talk about the tool number 3, developing empathy towards ourselves and others. And Celeste talked also about effective tools.
And effective tools are different depending on what it is that you're working on. The effective tools that we teach really are in Somatica, are really around emotional awareness and emotional connection, sexual self-awareness and sexual connection. And if you're working on a different thing in your life, you may have specific tools that are helpful in those arenas. But having those effective tools is really, really important. And then the next thing that you need is a safe place to experiment with those tools. In order to start practicing out in the world, we actually need to have experiences of success in a safe environment where we can make mistakes and we can laugh and we can be playful and we can cry about how hard it is, and we can rail against the way that the world is that makes these things even harder. We need that safe place once we feel a lower, securely attached and a lowered sense of shame, and we go, oh yeah, that would be really good. I would like to practice with my boundaries or be aware of my capacity and be able to share that with people without feeling so ashamed. And then you can practice with that. We teach people to practice with that, and they practice with it in the training all the time. And we also help our clients practice in that safe, loving container so that they can, just like little kids learning a new tool. It's like if you say, don't use the pencil like that, boom, they're going to shut down. And sometimes when people are out in the world trying to practice those tools, people do react to them in that way. So, they need a place where it's like, hey, have you tried using the pencil like this? It might work a little better, and it's a very different experience to have that gentle place.
Let me draw with you. Let's take turns drawing. You draw with a pencil like this, and I'll draw with a pencil like this. And that can be a nice fun to play with pencils. And I want to talk about, keep talking about the safe place to experiment with those tools, because part of the layer that is kind of holding us from making change is, and we talked about shame, but so we have the desire to change something, and we also have a layer of shame about not already doing it. And I hear it all the time. I feel it sometimes like that, like, oh my God, I'm doing this work for so many years and I still didn't figure it out, right? So we also have a layer of shame, and that's why a loving, the shamifying process ongoing is so powerful. And being in a loving community is so powerful, because you get to see other human beings as beautiful as you are, with their corners of not feeling comfortable about themselves and feeling like, oh, they need to change this. And you see yourself in so many other mirrors that reflect to you who you are, many times much nicer than what you think about yourself, and also help you see places that you can be gentler with yourself, and also move change along, just by seeing yourself in those mirrors. And also you get to reduce shame by seeing and working with the community and people in the community.
Yeah, not to mention that you have a whole group of cheerleaders cheering you on for every baby step, which all steps in this realm are huge steps, but every little step that you make in that realm. So I know how to allow myself to be loved by another, but I don't know how to love myself the same way. So I'm always scared of losing the loving validation of the other. Yeah, I think sometimes, for whatever reason, we learn to either be more other focused or self focused. And if we're other focused and we can accept other people and we kind of really put ourselves in their shoes, then we do need to cultivate the self side of that, which is a lot of the inner child work of sort of bringing that unconditional love and empathy to yourself. And it takes practice, and we have amazing tools for that, different kinds of visualizations and ways to play that start to create that internal bond. I think there's two different sort of axes of emotional connection. There's the self connection and then the other connection. And some people have very good other connection. Some people have very good self connection. But the idea is, can we have both, and can we have them at the same time and bring the same level of love and empathy in both of those places?
And someone asks here, I'm not a psychologist or a doctor. Can I take the training? Yes, definitely. Sometimes you know, like if you're someone who is doing work on yourself, if you're someone that is willing to look inside and have self-awareness and willing to cop to things that might be challenging about you, you can definitely take the training. We teach you tools that you're not going to learn in other places. You're not going to learn in therapy school. You're definitely not going to learn in medical school. So this training is very different than what's offered out there, and you don't have to have you don't have to be a professional in the field in order to take it.
So would this work for women who have been through cancer and want to reconnect intimately with their partners? The answer is absolutely yes. I think a lot of times with cancer, some of the treatments can really shut down the body and shut down the hormones, also can affect a body image and our sense of self and sort of eroticism in the world. And it's really, really helpful to have a safe place to kind of, you know, gently move yourself back into those kinds of energies and allow yourself to explore, you know, your body post the cancer experience and kind of see what it's like now and what it wants now. Because a lot of times those kinds of illnesses and treatments transform our body's needs. And we need to be able to update the files and be able to express those things in connection and, you know, unapologetically about the changes that have happened. And so we definitely, it's a great place to practice with those things if you have experienced cancer or some other illness that's sort of taken you out of your sexuality.
So it's what a beautiful question. If we never arrive, why is it that we continue trying? I understand what you say, but for me, even though I never arrive, I keep trying to travel. Does it make it redundant? No, we always strive for healthier relationship with ourselves. Our bodies are also striving to get to some, you know, like better health. And when we do that, it's really because you know, like that's the natural, you know, like flowers always try to grow towards the sun. That's like the nature of being alive, wanting to keep growing, and that's really is the direction. And it's really the difference in the, yeah, let's keep traveling, all of us. That's what we're doing here. I think that's wonderful. I don't see why live life without going towards the sun. And it's really like the quality of the travel that we're taking. Are we being like really rough on ourselves, or are we taking the more loving, gentle, self-reinforcing and others reinforcing road?
We're going to talk about scholarships and prices at the end. So I want to answer, how do you help enroll clients in this gentler version of acceptance when they come in with their perfectionist ideals? So the first way is that we hold that attitude towards them. And we also might just sort of make a gentle comment like, wow, you really tough on yourself, huh? You push yourself hard. So that there's this sort of self-awareness that starts to build. Oh, yeah, I do. And then they might say, yeah, but that's the only way that you get anywhere. And then you can say, yeah, it feels like, you know, you sort of like help them distance from it. It feels like that's the pathway that's helped you the most. There might be other ways, um, but maybe that has felt the most effective for you. And usually when I'm working with a perfectionist client, I have to somewhat go with them in a little bit of a training program at the same time as I'm continually cultivating gentleness in my attitude towards them and seeing if I can help them ease up their critical voice and be more loving to themselves. So they might really want to be, you know, put through the training steps or something like that. And I'll do some of that because we have a lot of tools that are like, how do you become a better lover? Or, you know, verbally, physically, all of that. And you can teach some of those tools and they will process it through their perfectionist brain. And then you just keep de-shamifying and loving and empathizing, relentlessly be gentle with them. And often it's contagious and they start to realize that when they're a little bit more gentle on themselves, things become easier. Like you can learn things with more ease.
And there's a question about what are some of the most effective specializations in starting my practice in 2020, or what populations benefit the most? I think everyone benefit from it. And the beauty of doing Somatica is that you can find what turns you on and what's the population that you want to work with and really go and support them. In Somatica, we really offer so many tools to people in different with different challenges and populations around relationship and sexuality, and, you know, like from teenagers to people in homes to people in midlife. In every stage, it's applicable. As a parent, it's applicable to everyone.
And I think people a lot in this time are dealing with sort of like stressors around intimacy, questions about how am I going to connect with people in this, sort of viral time? Like, how do I how do I create enough safety for myself, or how do I make choices around that? And so there are going to be a lot of work around that. And also, sort of some of the loneliness and depression that people are dealing with, to be able to be in connection, in loving connection with them, and help them stay loving towards themselves in that process.
And I want to talk about touch, because when people hear about experiential tools, they think about touch, but touch is just one tool in the toolkit of experiential tools. There are many, many other tools. So you introduce as a question about how do you start to go about touch with a trauma patient. So it really depends where they are, and then, like, we talk with people about consent. We help them see what is their consent. We help them find their boundaries. There's a lot of tools that are verbal before we can, and still experiential before we introduce touch.
So is going through the program the first time strictly for personal growth? Do you have to go through the program twice to use it in an existing coaching practice? What do you see the difference between sex coaching and relationship coaching? Are they always intertwined? Lots of questions here, so I'll start one by one. The initial, when you go through the program for the first time, if you've already done some coaching, or you have some training, or you're seeing coaching clients, you can start incorporating the tools of Somatica into your coaching practice right away. If you're kind of starting a new career, or you've never had any of these kind of personal growth experiences, often it takes twice through the training to really integrate the material to the point where you feel ready to be a coach in the practice. But we tell people when they finish the initial program that they should start seeing some clients at a slower, more sliding scale. Tell them that they've recently graduated, and then those are the clients that they have as their practice clients as they go through as an advanced student. And they can ask questions, in the advanced student trainings and groups, about, how should I work with this client? So we help people kind of become more and more capable, but also be able to start working with clients once they finish the initial training. I do think sex coaching and relationship coaching are always intertwined. If you start to just try to teach someone around sex and they don't have any tools, or they're not adept at all around emotional intimacy, then when they go out and they try to practice those sexy tools with people, and people get triggered, or there's an explosion, or there's anger or frustration or distancing or sadness in a relationship, they don't know what to do at all. And also, a lot of times emotional intimacy is part of what turns people on sexually. So to have both of those sets of tools is really, really helpful if you want to help people in their sex lives.
And the other way around as well. Like, I don't know, like, you can do relationship coaching. Eventually you kind of tap into sex at some point if you are dealing with adults. So it's really powerful to have the tools. That being said, there have been generations of therapists and relationship coaches have been doing it without tapping into sex, but that's kind of sad, because people don't feel like they can bring issues around sexuality if they don't feel that the coach knows or the therapist knows how to deal with it, or might feel uncomfortable. And it's been also like this kind of like of idea of like, oh, if the relationship go well, the sex just going to follow. And we know for sure that there is no relationship to one another whatsoever. People can have wonderful relationship and crappy sex, and people can also have really bad sex and good relationships. And then like having those two tools and be able to help them sort this out, even those gaps between what happens in sex and relationship, is very powerful. Sex does not follow a good relationship automatically.
So one more, if you're a burned out pursuer in a now sexless marriage with someone who is avoidant, how can this training help if your partner isn't interested? Yes, I have been there myself. And I think one of the things, that really helps is all of the tools of relationship empowerment, because ultimately, if we know what is happening in our lives and we've tried all of the different things. And there's a lot of things that you can try that you'll learn in the training that may be different than the things that you've tried in the past as a burnt out pursuer. And then additionally, if you try everything and you see, okay, this is where it's at, then we have some amazing tools to sort of help you be choiceful in the face of that. I think the thing that makes our lives feel so yucky is when we feel like we are outside of choice, like something is just happening to us and we don't have any control over it. And there are lots of ways to get back into a state of feeling choiceful, and really owning your decisions and why you're making them, that feels so empowering and can relieve all of that like tension and frustration and anger that can be building up over time in that kind of a pursuer distancer dynamic. So, we have a lot of tools for becoming empowered in any relational situation.
Amazing. Look at this. We did it. We talked about amazing tools for how change happens. We did talk about it from the class above the class perspective, as we said earlier, and the actual tools we're gonna, except for the tools of gentleness that we kept reinforcing here, the other tools you will be able to practice in the training if you decide so choose to do.
We hope to see more of you soon.